Blackwood Manor had long been abandoned and forgotten, standing as a dark silhouette against the evening sky. On a chilly, misty night, Lily, a young and curious journalist, arrived to uncover the truth behind the rumors of hauntings. She parked her car at the rusted gates, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. The mansion's windows stared back at her like soulless eyes. Lily pushed open the creaking door of Blackwood Manor. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but dilapidated foyer. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture lay covered in white sheets. Her footsteps echoed in the vast, empty space as she ventured further inside. As Lily explored the mansion, she felt an icy breeze pass by her. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's history. In the library, Lily found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard whispers and the sound of pages turning by themselves. She discovered an old journal belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lady Blackwood. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Lily's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Lily reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Lily discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lady Blackwood. As Lily read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lady Blackwood appeared, her face twisted with rage. She pointed at Lily and screamed, "You should not have come here!" The walls shook and the air filled with a chilling wind. Lily knew she had to leave immediately. Lily bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Lily reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Blackwood Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lady Blackwood's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Lily knew the haunting was far from over. In the heart of Hollow Creek, an abandoned house sits atop a hill, its windows shattered and its doors hanging off their hinges. The locals whisper tales of a family who disappeared without a trace, leaving behind only the echoes of their screams. But when a group of teenagers decides to spend the night in the house, they quickly realize that the rumors were just the beginning of the horrors that await them. As the group of teenagers gathers outside the house, they dare each other to spend the night inside, eager to prove their bravery. With nervous laughter and shaky hands, they push open the creaking door and step inside, their hearts pounding in their chests. Little do they know they're about to come face to face with the horrors that lie within. As the teenagers explore the house, they feel an oppressive presence weighing down on them, a sense of malevolence that seems to seep from the very walls. They hear whispers in the darkness and catch fleeting glimpses of shadowy figures out of the corners of their eyes. Fear grips them tight as they realize they're not alone in the house. As the night wears on, the teenagers uncover clues about the house's dark past. A family torn apart by tragedy, their spirits trapped within the walls for eternity. They find old photographs and newspaper clippings, piecing together the story of the family's demise. But as they delve deeper, they awaken something sinister that has been lying dormant for years. As the night progresses, the house comes alive with paranormal activity. Doors slam shut on their own, objects move of their own accord, and ghostly apparitions appear in the darkness. The teenagers huddle together, their screams echoing through the empty halls as they realize they're trapped in a nightmare from which there's no escape. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the teenagers make a final stand against the evil that haunts the house. Armed with makeshift weapons and fierce determination, they confront the ghostly apparitions that roam the halls, knowing that their survival depends on their ability to banish the darkness that lurks within. As dawn breaks, the paranormal activity subsides, and the house falls silent once more. The teenagers emerge from that darkness, battered and bruised but alive. They exchange weary smiles, knowing that they've faced their fears and emerged stronger for it. Though the scars of their ordeal will never fully heal, they take solace in the knowledge that they've conquered the darkness that once threatened to consume them.
Clara arrived at Ashwood House, an eerie, dilapidated mansion she had inherited from her aunt. The mansion stood on a hill, surrounded by dense, dark woods. The air was thick with fog, and the only sound was the distant hooting of an owl. As Clara walked up the creaky wooden steps, the front door slowly swung open on its own. Clara stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty hallway. Dust covered the floors, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. The walls were lined with faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors. She felt a sudden chill as she closed the door behind her, the silence inside the mansion almost deafening. Clara moved into the living room, where old, tattered furniture was draped in white sheets. An antique piano sat in one corner, its keys yellowed with age. As she walked past, she heard a single note play, sending shivers down her spine. She turned quickly, but no one was there. In the dining room, Clara found a large portrait of her Aunt Margaret above the fireplace. The eyes in the portrait seemed to follow her every move. As she stared at the painting, she heard faint whispering, as if someone was trying to communicate with her. She felt a cold breeze brush past her. In the library, Clara discovered an old, leather-bound diary hidden behind a row of books. The diary belonged to her aunt and detailed strange occurrences and eerie experiences in the house. As she read, the room grew colder, and she felt as if someone was watching her. Behind a bookshelf, Clara found a hidden door leading to a narrow, spiral staircase. She hesitated, but felt compelled to explore. Holding her flashlight, she descended the stairs, each step echoing in the darkness. The air grew colder and more oppressive with every step. The basement was damp and filled with old, dusty furniture covered in sheets. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls. In the center of the room stood an old wooden table with a black candle, which suddenly lit itself. Clara felt a sense of dread as she approached the table. Clara's flashlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The whispers grew louder, and she felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around to see a ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Leave this place," the ghostly figure whispered. Panic-stricken, Clara ran up the stairs, the house seeming to come alive with doors slamming and shadows moving. She burst through the front door into the night, her heart pounding. She didn't stop running until she reached her car, vowing never to return to Ashwood House. Breathing heavily, Clara glanced back at the mansion as she reached her car. In an upstairs window, she saw the ghostly figure of her Aunt Margaret watching her. The whispers faded, but the memory of that night would haunt her forever. She drove away, never looking back.
Grimsby Manor had a dark history that intrigued many, but only a few dared to explore its secrets. On a foggy autumn evening, Sarah, a young journalist with a passion for the paranormal, arrived at the mansion. She parked her car at the rusty gates, feeling a chill run down her spine. The mansion stood ominously in the distance, its windows like dark, watchful eyes. Sarah pushed open the creaking door of Grimsby Manor. Inside, the air was cold and musty. She turned on her flashlight, revealing a grand but decaying foyer. Dust and cobwebs covered every surface, and old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. Her footsteps echoed through the vast, empty space as she ventured further inside. As Sarah explored the mansion, she felt a sudden chill. Turning around, she saw a shadowy figure at the end of the hallway. The figure disappeared as quickly as it appeared, leaving her heart pounding. Determined to uncover more, she made her way to the library, hoping to find records of the mansion's dark past. In the library, Sarah found rows of dusty old books. As she searched through them, she heard faint whispers and the sound of pages turning on their own. She discovered an old diary belonging to the mansion's original owner, Lord Grimsby. The entry spoke of dark rituals and a curse that had been placed on the house and its inhabitants. Sarah's exploration led her to a room filled with mirrors. As she walked through, her reflection seemed to move on its own, eyes following her with an unsettling intensity. One mirror in particular caught her attention. In it, she saw the ghostly figure of a woman crying, her eyes pleading for help. Sarah reached out to touch the mirror, but the image vanished. Sarah discovered a hidden door behind a tattered curtain in the study. She descended the creaky stairs into a dark, musty basement. The room was filled with strange symbols painted on the walls and old, dusty books scattered on a table. She found a journal detailing the dark rituals and a curse placed on the house by Lord Grimsby. As Sarah read the journal, the basement grew colder. A ghostly figure of Lord Grimsby appeared, his face twisted with rage. He pointed at Sarah and screamed, "You should not have come here." The walls shook and the air filled with a chilling wind. Sarah knew she had to leave immediately. Sarah bolted up the stairs, the spirit's screams echoing behind her. She raced through the mansion, the walls seeming to close in on her. She burst through the front door and into the night, gasping for breath. The house stood silent and still, but she could feel the weight of its curse pressing down on her. Back in her apartment, Sarah reviewed the photos and notes she had taken. The evidence of the haunting was undeniable. She wrote her article, revealing the dark history of Grimsby Manor. As she finished, she felt a cold draft and heard Lord Grimsby's voice whisper, "You cannot escape the curse." Sarah knew the haunting was far from over.
In the heart of a dense forest stands an abandoned manor, its crumbling facade veiled in mist. Four friends, Sarah, Mark, Emily, and Chris, venture into the woods one foggy evening, drawn by tales of the manor's dark history. As they approach, the mist thickens, obscuring the path ahead. With trepidation, the friends push open the creaking front door and step into the foyer of the manor. Cobwebs hang from the ceiling, and dust motes dance in the dim light. The air is heavy with a sense of foreboding as they explore further, the floorboards groaning beneath their feet. Inside the manor, they encounter long, twisting hallways lined with closed doors. Each room they enter is filled with dusty furniture and forgotten belongings. Strange symbols are etched into the walls, and a chill wind whispers through the corridors, sending shivers down their spines. As they delve deeper into the manor, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to echo through the halls. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an eerie chorus. The friends exchange nervous glances, their hearts pounding in their chests as they try to locate the source of the haunting sounds. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. Their ethereal forms glide through the air, their movements slow and deliberate. The friends watch in horror as the spirits drift closer, their presence filling the manor with a chilling cold. With adrenaline driving them, the friends turn and flee from the manor, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly spirits follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends emerge from the manor, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the grass outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. As the first light of dawn breaks through the mist, they share a silent vow never to return to the haunted manor in the woods.
A group of friends, Alex, Maya, Ben, and Emma, arrive at the secluded Willow Lake for a weekend camping trip. The sun dips below the horizon as they set up their tents on the shore, the water reflecting the fading light. Excitement fills the air as they gather around a crackling campfire, swapping stories and laughter. As night falls, a thick fog rolls in from the lake, shrouding the campsite in an eerie haze. The friends exchange uneasy glances as the temperature drops, the crackling of the campfire the only sound breaking the silence. Shadows dance in the mist and strange shapes move just beyond the edge of their vision. As the night wears on, the friends begin to notice strange occurrences around the campsite. Personal belongings go missing, only to reappear in odd places moments later. The tent flaps flutter open and shut of their own accord, and eerie whispers float on the breeze. Tension mounts as they realize they are not alone in the darkness. Suddenly, a figure materializes out of the fog, a spectral apparition with hollow eyes and a gaping mouth. The friends recoil in horror as it reaches out towards them, its form shifting and wavering in the mist. Frozen with fear, they watch as it drifts closer, its unearthly wails echoing in the night. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends scramble to pack up their belongings and flee from the campsite. They race through the fog-shrouded forest, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the darkness. Branches claw at their skin, and roots trip them up as they push themselves to their limits, desperate to escape the grasp of the malevolent spirit. Exhausted and out of breath, the friends finally emerge from the forest and into the safety of the open meadow. They collapse on the grass, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear. As they catch their breath, they exchange relieved glances, grateful to have survived the night. But as they look back at Willow Lake, they can't shake the feeling that they have awakened something ancient and malevolent that will continue to haunt the wilderness for years to come. In an old, dusty attic, Emily found a large, ornate mirror covered with a white cloth. Curious, she pulled off the cloth, revealing a beautifully carved frame and a mirror that looked untouched by time. Her friend Jack warned her not to touch it, but Emily couldn't resist. As Emily gazed into the mirror, her reflection seemed to flicker. For a moment, she saw a shadowy figure standing behind her. She turned around quickly, but no one was there. Jack saw nothing and told her it was just her imagination. That night, Emily had a terrible nightmare. She dreamt of being trapped in the mirror, unable to escape. Shadowy figures surrounded her, whispering her name. She woke up in a cold sweat, the image of the figures lingering in her mind. The next day, strange things started happening. Objects moved on their own, and Emily felt a constant cold presence. Jack suggested they move the mirror back to the attic, but Emily felt an odd attachment to it and refused. Emily's grandmother visited and immediately recognized the mirror. She warned Emily about the curse, explaining that the mirror traps souls and that they must destroy it before it's too late. Emily was skeptical, but agreed to consider it. That evening, Emily started acting strange. Her eyes glazed over, and she spoke in a voice that wasn't her own. Jack realized the mirror was possessing her and tried to snap her out of it, but she attacked him, screaming that they mustn't destroy the mirror. Jack and Emily's grandmother decided to destroy the mirror. They grabbed a hammer and approached it cautiously. The mirror's surface rippled, and shadowy hands reached out, trying to stop them. With a desperate swing, Jack shattered the mirror. As the mirror shattered, a wail echoed through the room, and the shadowy figures dissolved into smoke. Emily collapsed, unconscious but unharmed. The room felt lighter, and the cold presence was gone. Emily woke up, confused but relieved. In the days that followed, Emily recovered and felt grateful to Jack and her grandmother. They disposed of the mirror's remains and made sure to never speak of it again. The house felt peaceful once more. Emily redecorated her room, replacing the mirror with a beautiful painting. Life returned to normal, and the haunting memories faded away. They knew they'd faced something dark, but their bond was stronger than ever.
4 friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lily, stood outside an old, abandoned house on a dare. The house was infamous in their town for being haunted, but they decided to spend the night there to prove their bravery. They pushed open the rusty gate and walked to the front door, which creaked loudly as they opened it. Inside, the house was dark and musty, with broken furniture and cobwebs everywhere. In the living room, they saw an old, dusty couch and a broken chandelier. Suddenly, a cold breeze blew through the room, making them shiver. They heard a faint whisper, but couldn't tell where it came from. They decided to explore upstairs. The wooden stairs creaked with every step. At the top, they found a long hallway with several closed doors. They heard a strange scratching sound coming from one of the rooms. They opened the door to the room and saw a rocking chair moving on its own. The temperature dropped suddenly, and they saw the faint outline of a ghostly figure in the corner. The figure whispered, "Leave this place." Panicking, they ran downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even colder and darker. They found strange symbols on the walls and old, dusty furniture. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure again, now clearer and more menacing. The ghost raised its hand, and the friends felt an icy wind pushing them towards the stairs. Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house, the door slamming shut behind them. They didn't stop running until they were far from the house. They vowed never to return and to never speak of what they had seen. Evelyn and her friends, Mark, Lisa, and John, stood at the edge of the dense forest, staring at the looming structure of Blackwood Mansion. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that seemed to reach out and grab at their feet. The mansion, abandoned for decades, had an eerie aura that made them shiver despite the warm summer evening. "I can't believe we are actually doing this," Lisa muttered, her voice trembling. "It's just for one night," Mark reassured her, though he didn't sound convinced. "We spend the night, prove the ghost stories wrong, and then leave." John, the skeptic of the group, laughed. "Ghosts aren't real. You'll see." Evelyn, the leader of the group, took a deep breath and stepped forward, pushing open the creaking iron gate. "Let's go." Inside the mansion, the air was thick with dust and the scent of decay. The wooden floorboards creaked under their feet as they explored the dimly lit corridors. Each room they entered seemed more decayed than the last, with peeling wallpaper and broken furniture strewn about. "Look at this," John called from one of the rooms. He held up an old photograph of a family, their faces blurred with age. "This must be the original owners." Evelyn shivered. "There's something unsettling about this place." Mark found an old journal on a dusty bookshelf. "Maybe this will tell us more about what happened here." As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Lights flickered even though the mansion had no electricity. The sound of footsteps echoed through the halls, though no one was there. Whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves. Lisa clung to Mark. "Did you hear that?" "It's just the wind," John said, though his voice was unsteady. Evelyn held the journal tightly, her eyes scanning the pages. "There's something here. Something about a curse." A loud crash echoed from the hallway, and they all jumped. Mark grabbed a flashlight and led the way, finding a broken mirror on the floor, though no one had touched it. Evelyn's hands trembled as she turned the pages of the journal. "It says here that the family who lived here dabbled in dark magic. They summoned something they couldn't control." Mark's eyes widened. "What did they summon?" "A spirit of vengeance," Evelyn whispered. "It's trapped here, and it feeds on fear." John scoffed, but his face was pale. "This is ridiculous. There are no such things as spirits." Lisa pointed to the mirror. "Then how do you explain that?" Before John could answer, the temperature in the room dropped suddenly. Their breath fogged in the air, and a low growl resonated from the shadows. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing red. The friends backed away, their fear palpable. The figure seemed to grow stronger, feeding on their terror. "Stay together!" Evelyn shouted, her voice breaking. John tried to act brave, stepping forward. "Leave us alone." The spirit lashed out, sending John crashing into a wall. Lisa screamed, and Mark pulled her back, trying to protect her. Evelyn held up the journal like a shield. "There's a way to banish it. We just have to find it." Evelyn frantically flipped through the journal, looking for the banishment ritual. "We need to find the symbols and say the words." Mark and Lisa barricaded the door, trying to buy them time. The spirit pounded against it, its growls growing louder. "Found it!" Evelyn cried, showing the page to the others. "Let's do this," Mark said, determination in his eyes. They quickly gathered the materials described in the journal, creating a circle of protection. Evelyn began to chant the words, her voice steady despite the fear. The spirit broke through the door just as Evelyn finished the chant. It roared in fury, but the circle of protection glowed, holding it at bay. "Keep chanting!" Evelyn yelled, her voice filled with authority. The spirit thrashed against the barrier, but it couldn't break through. Slowly, it began to weaken, its form dissolving into the air. With one final, deafening scream, the spirit vanished. The mansion fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere lifting. "We did it," Mark said, his voice filled with relief. The friends stumbled out of the mansion, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. They were exhausted, but relieved to be alive. "Let's never do that again," Lisa said, managing a weak smile. Evelyn held up the journal, now closed. "We should make sure no one else ever tries." John nodded. Agreed. This place should stay forgotten. They walked away, the mansion behind them now just a shadow against the rising sun. On a foggy evening, four friends, Jess, Ryan, Maya, and Ethan, arrive at Blackwood Manor, an imposing mansion nestled deep within the woods. The moon casts an eerie glow over the ivy-covered walls as they approach, their footsteps muffled by the dense fog. Jess shivers, feeling a chill run down her spine. With a creak, the massive oak doors of Blackwood Manor swing open, revealing a dimly lit entryway. Cobwebs cling to the high ceiling, and dust dances in the beams of their flashlights as they cautiously step inside. The air is heavy with the scent of age and decay, sending shivers down their spines. Inside the mansion, they navigate a maze of hallways, each corridor seemingly darker and more foreboding than the last. Paint peels from the walls, and the floorboards groan beneath their weight. Strange symbols etched into the wood send shivers down their spines, and they quicken their pace, eager to uncover the mansion's secrets. As they explore, they begin to hear faint whispers that seem to emanate from the very walls of the mansion. The whispers grow louder and more insistent, filling the air with an unsettling chorus. The friends exchange uneasy glances, their senses on high alert as they try to decipher the ghostly messages. Suddenly, ghostly figures materialize before them, translucent apparitions with hollow eyes and outstretched hands. The ethereal beings float through the air, their movements graceful yet unsettling. The friends watch in horror as the spirits draw closer, their presence filling the mansion with a chilling aura. With adrenaline coursing through their veins, the friends turn and flee from the mansion, their hearts pounding with terror. They race through the dark corridors, their breath ragged and their footsteps echoing off the walls. Behind them, the ghostly apparitions follow, their unearthly wails growing fainter as the friends struggle to escape. Exhausted and trembling, the friends burst through the door of the mansion, their minds reeling from the horrors they've witnessed. They collapse on the ground outside, their bodies shaking with adrenaline and fear. The moon casts a soft glow over the forest, a comforting reminder that they have escaped the clutches of Blackwood Manor. Emma, a young woman in her late 20s, inherits an old mansion called Oakwood Manor from her estranged aunt. She decides to visit the house, hoping to sell it quickly. As she arrives, she feels an unsettling chill in the air. The house, surrounded by towering oak trees, looks like it hasn't been touched in decades. On her first night in the house, Emma explores the dusty, dimly lit rooms. She finds a family portrait with a stern-looking woman who resembles her aunt. As she prepares for bed, she hears strange noises, whispers and footsteps echoing through the empty hallways. The next day, Emma discovers a locked room at the end of the hallway. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old, rusty key in a drawer. The key fits, and as she opens the door, she finds an old nursery filled with cobweb-covered toys and an old rocking chair that starts moving on its own. That night, Emma is awakened by a cold breeze and sees a ghostly figure of a child standing by her bed. The child whispers, "Help me." Terrified, Emma tries to communicate, but the figure vanishes. She realizes the house holds dark secrets that need to be uncovered. Determined to uncover the truth, Emma searches the house and finds a hidden diary in the nursery. The diary belonged to her aunt and reveals a tragic story about the death of a child named Lily, who was her aunt's daughter. The diary hints at dark rituals conducted to communicate with Lily's spirit. Emma decides to perform a seance to contact Lily's spirit. She sets up candles and chants the words from the diary. The room grows cold and Lily's ghost appears, revealing that she was trapped by her mother's rituals. Lily begs Emma to free her. Emma follows the diary's instructions to break the ritual. As she performs the final steps, the house shakes violently, and a dark shadow emerges, trying to stop her. Emma confronts the shadow, realizing it's her aunt's tormented spirit, refusing to let Lily go. With determination, Emma completes the ritual, and the shadow dissipates with a final, anguished scream. Lily's spirit is freed, and she smiles gratefully at Emma before disappearing into a bright light. The house grows calm and quiet. With the haunting over, Emma decides to stay at Oakwood Manor and turn it into a writer's retreat. She feels a deep connection to the house and its history. As she sits on the porch, the sun sets, casting a warm glow over the once haunted mansion.
A narrow path winds its way into the heart of the dense forest, the trees towering overhead like ancient guardians. As the sun dips below the horizon, long shadows stretch across the forest floor, setting a sinister tone for what lies ahead. Within the depths of the forest lies a moonlit clearing, bathed in an ethereal glow. The towering trees encircle the space, their branches swaying in an unsettling silence. Wisps of fog creep along the ground, adding to the eerie atmosphere of the secluded grove. Amidst the darkness stands an abandoned cabin, its once sturdy structure now crumbling under the weight of neglect. Boarded-up windows and sagging roof shingles give it a desolate appearance, while the encroaching vines seem to reclaim it for nature. The air is heavy with a palpable sense of unease. The forest path twists and turns, disappearing into the inky darkness of the woods. Twisted roots snake across the forest floor, tripping hazards in the dim light. Above, the canopy creates eerie patterns of shadow and light, adding to the sense of disorientation and dread. Within the depths of the forest flows the Whispering Brook, its gentle waters shimmering in the pale moonlight. Overhanging branches sway in the night breeze, casting eerie shadows that dance upon the surface of the water. Despite its serene appearance, an underlying sense of unease lingers in the air. Deep within the forest lies a forgotten graveyard, its weathered tombstones bearing silent witness to the passage of time. Wisps of mist cling to the ground, shrouding the graves in an otherworldly haze. The air is thick with the weight of forgotten souls, their presence palpable in the stillness of the night. A decaying bridge stretches across a gaping chasm, its once sturdy structure now a maze of rusted metal and rotting wood. The sound of creaking echoes through the night as the bridge sways precariously in the breeze. Moonlight filters through the gaps, casting unsettling shadows upon the turbulent waters below. A grove of twisted trees stands in the heart of the forest, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. Wisps of fog weave between the trunks, and the air is thick with an oppressive silence. In the depths of the forest stands a forsaken well, its stone walls weathered by time and neglect. Moss and ivy cling. Blackwood Manor stood isolated at the edge of a dense forest, its Gothic architecture looming ominously against the darkening sky. Emily, a young journalist, arrived to investigate the mysterious disappearances that had plagued the manor for decades. Determined to uncover the truth, she parked her car and approached the grand yet decaying front doors. As Emily stepped inside, the door creaked loudly, echoing through the vast, dimly lit hall. Dust motes danced in the air, disturbed by her presence. The air was cold and an unsettling silence enveloped her. She turned on her flashlight, illuminating the grand staircase and the darkened corners of the hall. Emily walked into the living room, where old furniture lay shrouded in white sheets. A large fireplace dominated one wall, with an ornate mirror hanging above it. She felt a chill as she noticed a faint figure reflected in the mirror. But when she turned, the room was empty. The only sound was the faint ticking of an old grandfather clock. Emily found a long hallway lined with portraits of the Blackwood family. The eyes of the painted figures seemed to follow her as she walked. One portrait, in particular, caught her attention, a stern-looking woman with piercing eyes. Suddenly, Emily felt a cold hand on her shoulder. But when she turned around, there was no one there. The library was filled with ancient books and heavy wooden furniture. Emily felt drawn to an old leather-bound journal on a desk. As she opened it, she found entries detailing strange rituals and dark secrets of the Blackwood family. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and the whispers of unseen figures filled the air. Emily discovered a hidden door leading to the basement. As she descended the creaking stairs, the air grew colder and the darkness thicker. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. She heard distant, echoing whispers and the faint sound of footsteps following her. At the bottom of the stairs, Emily found a room filled with strange symbols and an altar. The air was thick with the scent of incense and decay. She realized this was where the Blackwood family had conducted their dark rituals. As she explored, she heard a low, menacing chant and felt an oppressive presence closing in on her. Emily's flashlight died, plunging her into darkness. The chanting grew louder, and ghostly figures emerged from the shadows. She felt a cold hand grip her arm, pulling her towards the altar. Summoning her courage, she broke free and ran up the stairs, the spirit's wails echoing behind her. Emily burst out of Blackwood Manor, gasping for breath. The night was still and silent, a stark contrast to the horrors inside. Clutching the journal, she vowed to expose the truth about the Blackwood family. As she walked away, she glanced back one last time, seeing the faint outline of a figure watching her from an upstairs window.
Lena, Mark, and Sarah arrived at Ravenwood House, an old, decrepit mansion that had been abandoned for years. The house stood at the end of a lonely road, surrounded by thick, twisted trees. They were there to investigate the rumored hauntings for their paranormal blog. "This place is giving me chills already," Sarah whispered, hugging her coat tighter. "Perfect for our blog," Mark replied, setting up his camera. "Let's capture some real scares." Lena pushed open the heavy wooden door, which creaked loudly. "Let's go in and set up. The sooner we start, the sooner we can leave." Inside, the house was dark and filled with the smell of mold and dust. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, and old furniture was scattered about. As they explored, they found old portraits on the walls, books with yellowed pages, and broken trinkets. "Look at this," Mark said, picking up a dusty photograph of a family. "They must have lived here a long time ago." Lena shivered. "It feels like they're still watching us." Sarah glanced nervously at the dark corners. "Let's just get the footage and get out of here." Lena found an old leather-bound journal on a table covered in dust. She opened it carefully and started reading aloud. The journal belonged to the house's previous owner, detailing strange occurrences and sightings of a ghostly figure. "Listen to this," Lena said, her voice trembling. "The owner saw a woman in white every night standing by the window." Sarah hugged herself. "That's creepy. What happened to them?" Lena turned the pages. "It just stops. No explanation." Mark filmed Lena reading. "This is exactly what we need. Keep going." As they continued exploring, the temperature in the room suddenly dropped. They saw a figure in a white dress standing at the end of the hallway. The figure's face was obscured by shadows, but they could feel its eyes on them. "Do you see that?" Mark whispered, his camera shaking. "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice barely audible. "Let's get out of here." The figure started moving towards them. They ran, slamming a door behind them. "We have to leave," Sarah insisted, her eyes wide with fear. "Not yet," Lena said, determined. "We need to find out what's really happening here." Lena found another entry in the journal that described a ritual to banish the spirit. They needed to gather candles, salt, and a mirror. The tension was palpable as they worked quickly, knowing the spirit could return any moment. "Are you sure this will work?" Mark asked, placing candles around the room. "It has to," Lena replied, pouring salt in a circle. "We don't have any other choice." Sarah held the mirror, her hands shaking. "Just hurry." As they began the ritual, the spirit returned, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier created by the salt circle. Lena chanted the incantation from the journal, her voice growing stronger with each word. "Keep it away from us!" Sarah shouted, clutching the mirror tightly. "We're almost there!" Lena yelled, her focus unbroken. The spirit's form began to waver and dissolve as the ritual reached its climax. With a final, desperate scream, it vanished into thin air. They collapsed to the floor, exhausted but relieved. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by an eerie calm. "We did it," Lena said, her voice barely a whisper. "Let's get out of here," Sarah urged, her eyes still wide with fear. They gathered their equipment and left the house, the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon. As they walked away, they felt a sense of triumph and relief. "Let's never do this again," Mark said, managing a weak smile. As they walked away from the house, the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the landscape. The house behind them was now just a distant memory, a place they would never forget but never return to. "Let's make a pact," Lena said, stopping to look at her friends. "We never speak of this again." "Agreed," Mark and Sarah said in unison. They walked on, leaving the haunted Ravenwood house behind, grateful to have survived their night of terror.
In a small town shrouded in mist, there stood an ancient mansion, long abandoned and rumored to be haunted. Its dark silhouette cast a foreboding presence over the surrounding landscape, sending shivers down the spines of all who beheld it. Emily and Alex, two adventurous souls seeking thrills, stood before the rusted gates of the mansion. Despite warnings from locals, they were drawn to its mystery like moths to a flame. "Let's explore," Alex said, his voice tinged with excitement. As they crossed the threshold, the air grew heavy with the weight of centuries past. Cobwebs clung to the walls like spectral shrouds, and the faint echo of footsteps seemed to follow them into the darkness. Emily's heart raced as she whispered, "What have we gotten ourselves into?" Exploring deeper into the mansion's depths, Emily and Alex stumbled upon forgotten rooms filled with relics of a bygone era. Dust-covered portraits stared down at them with hollow eyes, and strange symbols adorned the walls. Each discovery sent a chill down their spines, but they pressed on, determined to uncover the truth. As they ventured further into the mansion, they encountered a presence unlike anything they had ever known. A spectral figure materialized before them, its ethereal form swathed in darkness. With a voice like ice, it whispered, "You dare to disturb my slumber?" With terror gripping their hearts, Emily and Alex fled through the twisting corridors of the mansion, pursued by unseen forces. Shadows seemed to reach out and grasp at them, and the air grew thick with the stench of decay. "We have to get out of here," Emily cried, her voice echoing in the darkness. At last they reached the heart of the mansion, where the source of its malevolence awaited. A swirling vortex of darkness engulfed them, threatening to consume their very souls. With trembling hands, Emily and Alex prepared to face the horrors that lurked within. In a final act of bravery, Emily and Alex confronted the darkness head-on. With artifacts in hand, they battled against the malevolent force that sought to claim them. With a burst of light, the curse that had plagued the mansion for centuries was finally broken. Emerging from the mansion's depths, Emily and Alex breathed a sigh of relief as sunlight broke through the clouds above. Though their adventure had been fraught with danger, they emerged stronger, their bond forged in the crucible of the haunted mansion. As they walked away from the mansion, Emily and Alex knew that they had faced their fears and triumphed over the darkness that had threatened to consume them. Though the mansion would forever remain a place of mystery and terror, they would always carry with them the lessons they had learned on that fateful night.
On a cold, moonlit night, four friends, Jake, Emily, Noah, and Lisa, stood at the gate of Blackwood Manor. The mansion was notorious for being haunted. They decided to enter, driven by curiosity and a dare. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The foyer was dark and dusty, with cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. Old portraits stared at them from the walls. They moved into the living room, where a grand piano stood in one corner and a large, broken chandelier hung from the ceiling. Suddenly, the piano played a single, haunting note. Everyone froze in fear. Gathering their courage, they climbed the creaky staircase to the second floor. The hallway was long and dark, with several closed doors. They heard faint, eerie whispers, but couldn't tell where they were coming from. They opened one of the doors and found an old nursery. Dusty toys were scattered around, and a rocking chair in the corner started moving on its own. They heard a child's laughter echoing through the room. Panicked, they rushed downstairs and found a door leading to the basement. Despite their fear, they decided to investigate. The basement was even darker and colder. Strange symbols were drawn on the walls, and old furniture was strewn around. In the basement, they heard footsteps behind them. Turning around, they saw the ghostly figure of a woman in a tattered dress. Her hollow eyes stared at them as she whispered, "Leave this place." Screaming, they ran up the stairs and out of the house. The door slammed shut behind them, and they could still hear the ghostly whispers. They vowed never to return to Blackwood Manor. Back at home, the friends sat together, still shaken by their experience. They knew they had encountered something truly terrifying and agreed never to speak of it again. It was a dreary afternoon when Sarah, Tom, and their teenage daughter, Lily, arrived at Eldridge Manor. The old, sprawling mansion stood ominously against the darkening sky, its windows like blank eyes staring back at them. The family had inherited the property from a distant relative, and despite its eerie appearance, they decided to give it a chance. "Wow, this place is huge!" Lily exclaimed, though her excitement was tempered by an uneasy feeling. Tom forced a smile. "Let's make it our home. It just needs a little work." Sarah glanced at the towering structure, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Let's get inside before it gets too dark." Inside, The manor was filled with antique furniture, dusty chandeliers, and creaking wooden floors. As they explored, they discovered a hidden staircase behind an old bookcase. Curiosity got the better of them, and they descended into a dimly lit basement. "This place is like a maze," Tom said, his voice echoing off the walls. Sarah found an old diary on a dusty table. "Look at this," she said, flipping through the pages. "It's from the 1800s. Lily, shining a flashlight around the room, gasped as she saw strange symbols carved into the walls. "What do these mean?" That night, as they settled into their new home, strange things began to happen. Lily's room was the coldest in the house, and she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Around midnight, she heard whispering voices and saw a shadow moving in the corner of her room. "Mom! Dad!" she screamed, running to their room. Tom and Sarah woke up startled. "What is it, Lily?" Tom asked. "There's something in my room. I heard voices and saw a shadow," Lily said, trembling. Sarah tried to comfort her. "It's just your imagination, honey. This place is old and creepy, but there's nothing to be afraid of." The next day, Sarah delved deeper into the old diary. It belonged to a woman named Eleanor Eldridge, who wrote about the strange occurrences in the manor and her experiments with the occult. She mentioned a mirror in the attic that was the source of the hauntings. "We need to find that mirror," Sarah said, showing the diary to Tom. Tom nodded. "Let's go to the attic." Together, they climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. Amidst the cobwebs and old trunks, they found the mirror, covered with a dusty cloth. "This must be it," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they uncovered the mirror, a cold breeze swept through the attic. The mirror's surface was strangely clear, and as they looked into it, they saw faint images of people moving behind them, ghostly figures trapped within the glass. Sarah gasped. "This is it. This is what's causing everything." Tom placed a hand on her shoulder. "We need to destroy it." But before they could act, the mirror began to glow, and the room filled with an unearthly light. The figures in the mirror became more distinct, reaching out towards them. "We need to get out of here," Tom shouted, pulling Sarah towards the stairs. That night, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own, footsteps echoed in empty hallways, and ghostly apparitions appeared throughout the house. The family realized they had to find a way to end the hauntings for good. "We need to perform a ritual," Sarah said, showing them a passage from the diary. "It's the only way to banish the spirits." Tom gathered the necessary items: candles, salt, and a ceremonial dagger. "Let's do this. We have no other choice." They set up the ritual in the basement, forming a circle with the salt and placing the mirror in the center. The family began the ritual, chanting the incantations from the diary. As they did, the temperature in the room dropped, and the ghostly figures from the mirror began to emerge, swirling around them. "Keep going," Sarah urged, her voice shaking. Tom held the dagger steady, ready for the final part of the ritual. "We're almost there." Lily, clutching her mother's hand, watched in terror as the spirits drew closer, their faces contorted with rage and sorrow. As Tom raised the dagger to complete the ritual, a powerful force knocked him to the ground. The mirror glowed brighter, and a deafening roar filled the room. "No, we can't stop now!" Sarah shouted, helping Tom up. With renewed determination, Tom plunged the dagger into the mirror. The glass shattered, releasing a blinding light and a wave of cold air that knocked them all back. The spirits screamed and dissipated, leaving the room in silence. The temperature began to rise, and the oppressive feeling lifted. "It's over," Tom said, breathing heavily. The next morning, the manor felt different. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and the oppressive atmosphere was gone. The family began packing their things, eager to leave the haunted house behind. "We did it," Lily said, smiling for the first time in days. Sarah nodded. "Let's never speak of this place again." Tom agreed. "We need to move on with our lives." As they drove away from Eldridge Manor, the weight of the past days lifted, and they felt hopeful for the future. Back home, life seemed to return to normal. However, one night, Sarah found a piece of the shattered mirror in her bag. She stared at it, her heart pounding. Suddenly, she heard a familiar whisper and saw a shadow move across the room. "Tom, it's not over," she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. As the shadow loomed larger, the whisper grew louder, and Sarah realized with horror that the spirits had followed them home. Michael, a man in his late 30s, receives a surprising letter. His great-uncle, whom he barely knew, has passed away, leaving him an old manor in the remote countryside. Intrigued and financially struggling, Michael decides to visit the manor with his wife, Sarah, and their teenage daughter, Emily. Michael reads the letter aloud. It says we have inherited an estate. Sarah looks at him skeptically. Are you sure this is a good idea? Michael nods. We could use a fresh start. Besides, what harm could it do? Emily, always up for an adventure, adds, It sounds exciting. Let's go. The family arrives at the manor in the late afternoon. The mansion is grand but clearly neglected, surrounded by overgrown gardens and tall, dense trees. The sky is overcast, casting a gloomy shadow over the scene. Emily shivers. This place gives me the creeps. Michael tries to be optimistic. It's just old. We can fix it up. Sarah clutches Emily's hand. Let's stay close and see what's inside. Inside, the manor is filled with dust, cobwebs, and a musty smell. The furniture is covered with white sheets. As they explore, Emily finds an old, ornate mirror in one of the rooms. Unlike the rest of the house, the mirror's surface is strangely clean. Look at this mirror, Emily calls out. Sarah touches the frame. It's beautiful, but it feels out of place. Michael frowns. Why is it so clean? That night, the family tries to settle in. Michael and Sarah fall asleep quickly, but Emily struggles. Around midnight, she hears faint whispers and feels a cold breeze. The mirror in her room begins to fog up, revealing words written from the inside. Help us, it reads. Terrified, Emily runs to her parents' room. Mom, Dad, there's something in the mirror. Michael, groggy, tries to comfort her. It's just your imagination, Emily. Go back to sleep. The next day, the family visits the local library to learn more about the manor. They discover that it was owned by Michael's great-uncle, a reclusive man with a dark interest in the occult. Sarah reads from an old newspaper. Local recluse found dead under mysterious circumstances. Manor believed to be haunted. Michael sighs. This explains a lot. We need to be careful. Emily, still shaken, adds, What if the spirits are still here? Back at the manor, Michael discovers a hidden door in the basement. Inside, they find an old study filled with books on the occult, strange artifacts, and a large locked chest. Sarah examines a book. He was into dark stuff. This can't be good. Michael tries to open the chest, but fails. We need to find the key. There might be answers inside. Emily points to a strange symbol on the wall. I've seen this symbol before, in my room. That night, the hauntings escalate. Objects move on their own, and ghostly apparitions appear. Emily is dragged out of bed by an unseen force, and Sarah sees a shadowy figure standing at the end of the hallway, watching them. We have to leave now, Sarah screams, but the doors are locked and won't open. Michael grabs an old book from the study. This book has instructions to banish the spirits. We need to perform the ritual. Desperate, the family gathers in the basement to perform the ritual. They light candles and arrange the symbols in a circle. Michael reads the incantation aloud, while Sarah and Emily hold hands, trembling. As the ritual progresses, the house shakes, and the spirits grow more agitated. A blinding light fills the room, and the spirits are drawn into the circle, screaming. Keep going, Michael! Sarah yells over the noise. With a final shout, Michael completes the incantation, and the spirits vanish. The house falls silent. The next morning, the manor feels different. The oppressive atmosphere is gone, and sunlight streams through the windows. The family packs up their belongings, relieved that the ordeal is over. We should tell someone about this place, Sarah says, looking back at the manor. Michael nods. Let's make sure no one else has to go through this. They drive away, leaving the manor behind. Back home, life seems to return to normal. But one night, Emily finds the old mirror in her room, even though they left it at the manor. Her heart races, as she sees words slowly appear on the surface. "We are not done," it reads. Emily turns to see a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing with malevolence. She screams as the room plunges into darkness.
Willow House, an old decrepit mansion, stands alone in the middle of an overgrown yard. Its windows are shattered, and ivy climbs up the stone walls. As the sun sets, the house is bathed in a gloomy light, casting long shadows that hint at the mansion's dark past. Inside Willow House, the foyer is filled with dust and cobwebs. An old chandelier hangs from the ceiling, its crystals dulled by grime. A grand staircase leads up to darkness, and broken furniture lies scattered, remnants of a time long forgotten. The living room is a snapshot of a bygone era, with a dusty sofa and a cold, empty fireplace. Portraits of stern-looking ancestors line the walls, their eyes seeming to follow every movement. The air is thick with the scent of neglect and faded grandeur. In the dining room, a long table is draped with a dusty, tattered tablecloth. Cobwebs hang from a once elegant chandelier, and old rusty cutlery is scattered about. The broken windows let in the cold night air, amplifying the room's eerie stillness. The kitchen is in disarray with broken cabinets and old pots and pans scattered around. The walls are stained and the floor is covered in debris. An old rusted knife lies on the counter, a silent witness to the passage of time. The grand staircase is enveloped in darkness. The wooden steps creak with every movement, and the banister is thick with dust. Faint, eerie whispers echo through the air, sending shivers down the spine. In the bedroom, a canopy bed stands covered in dust and cobwebs. Moonlight filters through cracked windows, casting eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper. An old wardrobe in the corner has its doors slightly ajar, adding to the room's unsettling atmosphere. The attic is cluttered with old, forgotten items covered in sheets and dust. A single dim light bulb hangs from the ceiling, casting long shadows that dance eerily. The air is thick and musty, filled with the scent of decay and lost memories. A hidden door in the attic reveals a secret room. Inside, the space is filled with old books and strange artifacts. A large, dust-covered mirror dominates one wall, reflecting an eerie, distorted image. The atmosphere is heavy with an unseen presence, making the air feel thick and oppressive. As dawn breaks, Willow House is bathed in the soft light of the morning sun. The shadows recede, revealing the full extent of the mansion's decay. Birds begin to chirp, their cheerful notes bringing a sense of normalcy back to the eerie setting. The horrors of the night fade, but the memories linger, a haunting reminder of the echoes that inhabit Willow House. In the heart of the small town of Ravenswood, a young historian named Emily discovered an ancient, dusty manuscript in the basement of the local library. The manuscript, bound in dark leather, was covered in strange symbols and appeared to be centuries old. Emily's curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to take it home for further study. As she left the library, the old librarian, Mr. Finch, watched her with a worried expression. "Be careful with that book," he warned. "It's said to be cursed." Emily shrugged off his concerns. "It's just an old book. What harm could it do?" At home, Emily began to translate the manuscript. It told the story of a powerful sorcerer who had cursed the book to trap the souls of those who read it. As she read, strange things started happening. The room grew colder, and shadows seemed to move on their own. Emily's cat, Luna, hissed and arched her back, staring at an invisible presence. Ignoring the signs, Emily continued to read, her fascination growing. "I have to know more," she muttered to herself, her eyes glued to the ancient text. Late that night, Emily was awakened by a cold breeze and the feeling of being watched. She looked around her dark bedroom and saw a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. It had hollow eyes and a twisted smile. "Who are you?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond but began to move closer, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. Emily scrambled out of bed and turned on the light, but the figure vanished. Panting, she realized the curse was real. She needed help. The next day, Emily visited her friend Alex, who was an expert in the occult. She told him everything about the manuscript and the shadowy figure. "This is serious," Alex said, flipping through the manuscript. "You need to destroy this book before it's too late." Emily hesitated. But it's an incredible find. There must be another way. Alex shook his head. The longer you keep it, the stronger the curse will become. You don't understand the danger you're in. Emily reluctantly agreed. They decided to perform a ritual that night to break the curse. As night fell, Emily and Alex gathered the necessary items for the ritual: candles, salt, and an ancient incantation. They returned to Emily's house and set up in her study, drawing a protective circle on the floor. "Are you sure this will work?" Emily asked, placing the candles around the circle. "It has to," Alex replied, lighting the candles. "We don't have any other choice." Emily's hands trembled as she held the manuscript. "Let's do this." As they began the ritual, the temperature in the room plummeted. The shadowy figure reappeared, more menacing than before. It howled and thrashed against the barrier of the protective circle. "Keep chanting!" Alex yelled over the noise. Emily's voice wavered as she recited the incantation, but she kept going. The figure's form started to waver, and it let out a piercing scream. With one final burst of energy, it shattered into 1,000 pieces of darkness, vanishing completely. Panting, Emily and Alex looked at each other. "Is it over?" Emily asked. "I think so," Alex replied, his voice shaking. The room was eerily quiet after the spirit vanished. Emily knew what she had to do next. She took the manuscript and, with a heavy heart, threw it into the fireplace. The flames roared to life, consuming the ancient book. As the manuscript burned, Emily felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The curse was finally broken. "Thank you, Alex," she said, watching the flames. "We did it together," Alex replied. "Let's hope we never encounter anything like this again." In the days that followed, Emily's life returned to normal. The eerie occurrences stopped, and she was able to focus on her work again. She vowed to be more cautious with the ancient texts she studied. One evening, she and Alex met at a cafe to catch up. "How are you holding up?" Alex asked. "Better," Emily said with a smile. "I think I've had enough excitement for a lifetime." They laughed, but a part of Emily still wondered about the other secrets the world held. For now, though, she was content to leave them undiscovered. As Emily walked home from the cafe, she felt a chill in the air. She glanced around, suddenly uneasy. When she arrived at her apartment, she found a package waiting at her door. Curious, she opened it and gasped. Inside was another ancient manuscript, even older than the one she had destroyed. Attached was a note, "For your collection." Emily's heart raced. She looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew this was far from over. Emily sat at her desk, staring at the new manuscript. She knew she should destroy it, but her curiosity was overwhelming. She reached out and opened the book, unable to resist. As she began to read, the room grew colder once again. Shadows crept along the walls, and a familiar sense of dread filled the air. The curse had returned, and this time, it was more powerful than ever. Emily was trapped in an endless cycle, forever bound to the cursed manuscripts. The haunting of Ravenswood was far from over. Asterisk. It was a dark and stormy night. Sarah and her friends, Mike and Lucy, decided to take a shortcut through the old haunted woods to get home faster. They had heard the stories about the woods, but they didn't believe in ghosts. Asterisk, asterisk. As they entered the woods, the wind howled through the trees, and shadows danced in the dim light of their flashlights. The path was narrow and overgrown, making it difficult to walk. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise coming from the darkness. It sounded like whispering, but they couldn't understand the words. Sarah suggested they keep moving, but Mike wanted to check it out. They came across an old abandoned cabin. The windows were broken, and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Lucy felt a chill run down her spine as they approached it. Inside the cabin, the air was cold and damp. Cobwebs covered the corners, and the floor creaked with every step. They found old furniture and strange symbols carved into the walls. Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Just as they were about to leave, a ghostly apparition appeared in front of them. It was a woman dressed in old-fashioned clothes with a sorrowful expression. She whispered, "Leave this place." Terrified, they ran out of the cabin and back into the woods. The ghostly woman seemed to follow them, her whispers growing louder and more desperate. They could feel her cold presence right behind them. In their panic, they lost the path and found themselves deeper in the woods. The trees seemed to close in on them, and the whispers of the ghostly woman echoed around them. Just when they thought they were lost forever, they saw a faint light in the distance. They followed it and found themselves at the edge of the woods, the ghostly whispers fading away. They finally made it out of the woods, panting and scared, but safe. They vowed never to take that shortcut again and hurried home, the haunting experience etched in their memories forever.
The camera pans over a serene lake surrounded by towering trees. The water reflects the golden hues of the setting sun, creating a picturesque scene. But beneath the tranquil surface lies a sinister secret waiting to be uncovered. A group of friends arrives at a lakeside cabin for a weekend getaway. They laugh and joke as they unpack their bags, eager to unwind and enjoy the beauty of nature. As night falls, one of the friends, Emma, shares a local legend about the lake, a tale of a vengeful spirit haunting its waters, seeking revenge on anyone who dares to disturb its slumber. The group dismisses the legend as mere superstition. Strange occurrences plague the cabin, whispers in the night, unexplained shadows flickering in the corners, and cold drafts chilling the air. The friends brush off their unease, attributing it to the eerie atmosphere of the lake. Exploring the cabin, one of the friends, Jack, finds an old journal hidden beneath the floorboards. Its pages reveal the tragic history of the lake, a tale of betrayal and murder that has haunted its shores for centuries. The vengeful spirit of the lake manifests, its ghostly form stalking the friends with malicious intent. Terror grips their hearts as they realize they are being hunted by a force beyond their understanding. In a desperate bid for survival, the friends confront the vengeful spirit at the water's edge. Armed with courage and determination, they must uncover the truth behind the spirit's rage to break the curse that binds them. Through bravery and sacrifice, the friends uncover the truth behind the spirit's curse and lay it to rest. As dawn breaks, they emerge from the darkness, forever changed by their harrowing ordeal. Emma, a young writer in her late 20s, inherits Blackwood Manor from her estranged grandmother. The manor is located on the outskirts of a small town surrounded by dense, dark woods. Emma decides to move in, hoping the isolation will inspire her writing. As she arrives, she feels an eerie chill. The mansion, with its tall spires and ivy-covered walls, seems to loom over her ominously. Despite her unease, Emma is determined to make this her new home. On her first night, Emma struggles to sleep. The house is filled with strange noises, the creaking of floorboards, the whisper of the wind through cracks in the windows, and distant, indistinct whispers. She hears what sounds like footsteps outside her bedroom door, but when she checks, no one is there. She returns to bed, her mind racing with unease and exhaustion. The next day, while exploring the house, Emma discovers a locked door in the attic. Curious, she searches the house and finds an old, rusty key hidden in a drawer. She uses the key to unlock the door and finds a small